Hello and welcome to this episode of Soul Growth. I am very excited today because I have my first guest, debut guest here on the show, and it is Sabriyé Dubrie. And Sabriyé is a best-selling author, mystic, and the founder of Soul Embodiment Therapy. And she helps individuals and professionals heal their psychological patterns and subconscious programming on a soul path level so that you're free to create the life and business of your dreams. And I love all of that. I feel like we're very much in sync in terms of what we're here to do in the world. And the reason that I invited Sabriyé on today was to have a specific conversation, which is very aligned for this week and this month, because we are in the month of February. It is Valentine's Day on Friday. When you guys listen to this or watch this, it will be Valentine's Day, or at least when it's released. And perfect time to talk about twin flames. Twin flames is how I actually came into contact with Sabriyé many years ago, probably circa 2014, actually. And I absolutely loved her work, loved what she was putting down, resonated deep in my soul. And then, Sabriyé, I know you stepped away from the whole twin flame world for a while. And I was very intrigued when I saw a recent post to say that you're dipping your toe back in that water. So I'm very much looking forward to our conversation today and getting deeper into twin flames, what the hell that means, who they are, is that you, how that impacts your spiritual journey, all that good stuff. So Sabriyé, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, awesome. So I would love to know what brought you back into the world of twin flames recently.
Uh, well, if I took a break from the twin flame because as a twin flame facilitator, you get to deal with a lot of things that you might not, think is possible or expect. And so at some point, I just didn't want to work with people anymore that only wanted to work with me as a way to get what they wanted. And of course, there's always that little element in, what incentivizes people to do any kind of work. But still, there was like this idea, and no matter how many times I told people, look, you know, we're going to do this session together, but that doesn't automatically end up in your twin flame coming back. And most people understood that. But a lot of people, despite the fact that they said, yes, I understand, still were in it for that end result. And then the problem is, no matter what you address, like even if it's incest wounds, mother wounds, father wounds, like codependency, no matter how spectacular the healing session is or was, it didn't live up to what they truly and deeply wanted. And that was the romantic outcome. And at
Sure.
some point I was like, this isn't working anymore. This is not the type of work that I want to be doing because I'm not this machine that you can just throw money at and then I will magically, but I think it's because it's so influenced by the like psychic industry. So there's such a belief system there that if you just throw some money at it, someone will lift the curses, burn away your karma, like do all of this magic, and then you will magically, without much suffering, get this happy end that you're dreaming of, and a lot of people go broke trying to make that happen, and so. That's of course not what I do. I work with people to actually face, their deepest shadows, bring back pieces of their psyche, their soul that they've lost through trauma and reintegrate, so that they can really create this deeper sense of wholeness and yeah, function better in the world, break deep karmic patterns. And it's not about ending up in this romantic fairy tale happy end that you're not going to be able to maintain anyway if you do not address the codependency, or if you do not address, your sexual wounds from when you were molested or abused as a child, etc., etc. And so there's this illusion being projected on these relationships that somehow, because this is the divine counterpart, it's going to kind of like magically bypass all of these issues that are just issues and that will also be issues within a twin flame connection. The twin flame connection doesn't, um, you know, solve these problems, first of all. And secondly, it actually makes them more prominent, makes them more important to heal, because the twin flame brings out our wounding. It helps us to realize just how deeply wounded we are. And that's not to say that we're broken, because a lot of people also translate it as wounded being broken. No, that's not it. But, as a human race, we carry a lot of wounding. And I think it's a little bit important to then explain that we used trauma in order to densify our energies from light beings into physical beings. So when we split from source, that was our first trauma, and that started this accumulation of trauma in order to densify into physical form. And so that's the basis of our wounding. And there is not a person on planet Earth that does not carry subconscious wounding. And the fact that you might not remember what that wounding is does not mean that it's not there, just as much as that because you can't see bacteria and viruses with the naked eye doesn't mean they don't exist.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of that. So, my experience with twin flames. So, put it into perspective, I am a lover girl through and through. Not a girl, but love a woman. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it. So, I absolutely love love. And from as young as I can remember, I was in love with The Little Mermaid, which, if you know the real story of The Little Mermaid, is not actually that romantic, but the Disney version is. And I absolutely loved it. And way before any business dreams, dreaming of having children, family, any of that, I always dreamt of him. And I knew that I would grow up and marry the love of my life and live happily ever after, just like a Disney movie, right? So
Mhm.
my listeners know that hasn't worked out for me yet, but we're working on it. But I didn't go out looking for the term twin flame. So I've always known about soulmates. So my understanding is soulmates, we have multiple soulmates. They could be friends, it could be a family member, like it could be anyone, it could be multiple people. Some people even believe their pets are their soulmates. It's a soul to soul connection. Twin flames, my understanding is like, it's not a hierarchy, but if you imagine there was one, twin flames are like the top of that. They only have one versus soulmates where there's multiple. And I'd never heard of twin flames, never, ever, ever in my life. And then one day I was sitting with a friend and we were at lunch and she was like, da 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 da, blah, 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 twin flame. It's like, what's that? But something resonated deep within me. And I heard a whisper in my ear and it said, his name is that for you. And I was like, oh. Then I got really excited because I was thinking, oh, this is like my ultimate love story. Oh my gosh, yes. We'll do a few things, like you said. Thankfully, my intuition has saved me from spending a lot of money. I've never spent money on twin flame stuff. Um, doing all of this stuff to get, and then we'll live happily ever after. And there are, I don't even know how many YouTube readers there are that do their card readings and do their things. And then when I look at the views on them, I'm like, it's fascinating. I've never been in a twin flame like group or community because that never resonated with me. And all
Mhm.
of that to say that there was all of this stuff, but it never fully resonated. I guess I kind of knew it was something deeper. And then I think I was doing an internet search one day and your website came up and I downloaded your ebook and I read it. And as much as it wasn't stuff that I didn't fully want to hear, it resonated. I knew it to be true. And I don't remember the ins and outs of your book, but I remember that it was basically, you said, this twin flame journey isn't so much about coming into the ultimate relationship and living happy ever after. That is possible and it can happen. And it's ultimately about you coming home to you. And yeah, I didn't really want to hear that because I wanted to read, do this, do that, and then you're going to get this, which is how lots of us are conditioned, right? But it was very much not that. And after years of going through my own experiences, reading, learning, watching, witnessing, intuiting, I concur that I believe the ultimate reason for a twin flame journey is the spiritual growth that it gives you. And it is about the healing and coming home to you. And actually, I'm now at a place where I would still love to be with that person and live happily ever after. And I'm open to that. And if it's not him, I'm good. Like, you can give me a divine counterpart or a soulmate. Like, I'll be okay. There's not that neediness anymore. And
Mhm.
much of that is from, again, my experiences, but it's also about my own healing and the work that I've done on me. And right now, I'm I'm good by myself. I want to be with someone, and I do believe that I need a man. I don't believe we're made to be alone. There's too many women out
Mm-mm.
there that are like, I don't need a man. I'm not that person, but I'm good by myself. I enjoy my own company. And people often question and ask me, like, how have you been single for all this time?
How long have you been single?
I'm not answering that in public. Okay, yes, I am. 13 years.
Interesting.
And for much of that, I was raising my son by myself.
Hmm.
So when you're responsible for children, my outlook on that is you're not just looking for a partner for yourself. I'm
No,
looking for someone to help raise my child, to be a role model for my child. So the bar becomes a lot higher.
absolutely.
The
Yeah. No.
parameters become very different. It was hard in the beginning. Again, love a girl. I love love. I wanted
Hmm.
to be in a relationship. I never wanted to raise my son by myself. I was quickly being shown stuff and learning stuff
Hmm.
that helped me to see that it's about more than just being in a relationship. And
Hmm.
who I am now and who I was then, I would have tolerated and settled for a lot less.
Hmm.
The
Absolutely.
growth that I've done, the healing that I've done, and when you look at a lot of relationships now, knowing what I know, knowing what I've learned and what I've healed through, a lot of people aren't in relationships because they truly love or want to be with that person. They're there because of convenience. They're there because, oh, it's been this long. And when I was in my previous relationship, I get that feeling. We'd been together for 6 years. I knew it wasn't right in my soul anymore, but in came we've been together for 6 years. We have a child together. We live together. Where am I going to live? How am I going to afford it? All of these conditioned things that are on top, it changes
Hmm.
the dynamics. So, and I see that so much. I see people that are in relationships and they're not happy.
No.
And I used to get really excited when people, I'd say, like, how long you been together? And they'd be like, we've been together for 15 years. I'd be like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Or 30 years or 50 years, whatever it is. Now my question isn't that. My question, I haven't asked this to anybody, but this is what I think in my head. Like, how many happy years have you spent together?
Hmm. Yeah.
I could have been in a relationship years ago, no doubt, if I was willing to settle. But first of all, my soul, this has been the biggest part of my journey. My
Yeah.
soul has been calling higher and to more. I'm
Hmm.
able to settle in that.
True. And I think what you said before is so true for single mothers raising children in this day and age is, first of all, you want someone who's serious and is not only going to booty call. Secondly, you don't want drugs in your house. Yeah, you don't want a certain behavior in your house. And so, that kind of thins out possibilities, especially if you live in like big cities. Like when I was a single mom, I lived in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and I would be like looking on the list, first of all, find someone who doesn't already have a girlfriend or a wife. Yeah. So that kind of person that you're like, okay, are you single? And then is it, you know, do you smoke a joint? And I don't want that behavior around my children. So I don't want to set that kind of example for my children. And so that kind of like thins the amount of candidates that are left, especially in these like bigger cities.
Yeah, and a lot of it was also, I grew up with a mum who had men
Yes,
in and out of our house, random men. There's
yes.
nights that I remember there were one night stands. I'm like, okay. She was in another relationship and had somebody living in our home, and that man was very unstable. He used to beat the absolute shit out of her, and he almost killed her. So
Yeah.
there is that, and it's not from a wounding perspective. Maybe it is a little bit of wounding, but it was also just a, I've seen that and I don't want that. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that we are, with the rise of social media and the internet and what we're exposed to these days, we know a lot more things. There's just so many things to consider. You know, we hear stories, we know things, they're all going through my mind. But ultimately, my main priority was raising my son. You know, we were in this situation where it was just the two of us. There were times that we were almost homeless, and it's like my priority is this child who, this is not his fault. Like, I just need to protect him, and it was just about creating a strong foundation, that stability for him, and raising him
Mhm.
to be the best that he can be. And that's not to say that I didn't matter. I wasn't important. I was never one of those mums that's like, you know, the children are all,
Yeah.
you know, give everything to the children, forget about me being a
Mhm.
martyr. It's just the way it was. And he's now 18. He's an adult, and I feel like this is a fresh start and a new beginning. And
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm, like I shared, I'm not the same person that I was. And my son's grown, and he'll always be my son, obviously, but he doesn't need me in the same ways that he did. And I'm looking forward to just a fresh start. That's how it feels, anyways. I did a podcast episode last year talking about Capricorn, Pluto leaving Capricorn, which is a whole thing.
Mhm.
I know that you
Mhm.
are aware of some of that because I've seen some of your
Yeah.
posts. I've not, I've never been into astrology, but what I learned last year, what I was being shown, was so relevant and poignant. So
Yeah.
it was the ending of a massive cycle. And then my son turning 18, and me, I found out that I was in a personal 9 year last year. So that was all about endings, closure, you know, kicking
Mhm.
out anything that doesn't serve you. I feel like this is truly a fresh start, and there's so much possibility and opportunity. And I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to being in a relationship again, and being in a healthy relationship, me being healthy in a healthy relationship. I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to starting a family. I'm looking forward to having new adventures. I know a lot of people around my age believe that, you know, if they were single, be like, oh, you know, I'm 39, and you know, my clock's running out, and all of that kind of thinking, which is a lot of conditioning in our society. And I just don't have those beliefs. I did, but I
Mhm.
realized that it was just conditioning that had been put on me and not something that I inherently believe. And I now
Mhm.
believe that I am meant to have more children. I will have more children. And I'm meant to be like the beacon of light that says, you know, you can have babies in your 40s and still find the love of your life, and, you know, have the happy ever after. Because I do believe it exists. It's
Yeah.
just not as step one, two, three as a lot of us have been grown up and conditioned to be. And it's not just about the other person. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned on my journey. You know, it is about me. Everything starts with me. It starts inside
Yeah.
of me. And one of the things that I love about your work, it doesn't just start in me and with me about this lifetime of my childhood. It goes
Mhm.
back so much more than that. And I love your work that, you know, I talk a lot about the subconscious levels, which I know your work covers, but you go back down the soul path wound. You were sharing earlier how we come from stars. We are stardust, right? That's what you were saying earlier about us, source and light, and then splitting from there. But a lot of us have had multiple lifetimes, and what a lot of people don't realize is that we carry our shit and our trauma and our lessons from those lifetimes. And they're not here to haunt us in this lifetime and to keep us stuck. They're there for us to break those cycles, those generational patterns, and say, this shit ends with us. and carving out a new path. And all of that feeds
Exactly.
into children and relationships and career and money and success and all of the things. It's not a pick and mix where it's just this, and that. It impacts everything. And I find that
Yeah,
fascinating. I also find it mind blowing. I also find it scary because I'm just like, where does this stop? One of my mentors said years ago, like some of us have like lived 2,000 lifetimes. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like you think you're getting somewhere in your healing, and then you figure out there's this bit, there's oh, it's mind-boggling, but fascinating and blessed because I think about our ancestors didn't have the resources or the access to the resources that we have today, and the choices and the options and all of the things. And actually, through a different lens, we're very blessed to live in this time. And also, we chose to come here at this time and do this work.
true, true. Although I think the disadvantage of this time is that there is a lot out there. So there's a
Mm,
lot clouding it. And so yeah, where to begin? I think at this time we have tools available to us that are unique for our times, and I think that is also one of the reasons, aside from the fact that it's kind of like spilled over into mainstream media, the twin flame thing is coming up so much. But I think it's also because twin flames really have a tendency to come into each other's lives at moments when they're ready to release big chunks of experienced trauma, and they help each other do so. So, that's one of the tools that we have. We have our ancestral lineage, we have our Earth family, we have our soul family, we have all of these built-in mechanisms. We have the alignment of the stars that can also really activate the things that we want to work on in this lifetime, the soul's plan. So there is a lot guided and in place for us, but I think one of the things that most people underestimate is that it is not, and like they think because it's a natural process and that it will happen all on its own, and it will not. Yeah, you have to be an active participant of this work. Yeah, it's not going to happen for you. The moon, Pluto in Capricorn, Pluto in Aquarius, whatever, it's not going to do the work for you. It's going to bring you into ideal circumstances, to trigger whatever needs to be worked through. But then it's up to you to actually deal with it. And I think that's where a lot goes wrong. And I think that there is a lot of bypassing as well. Um, and um, and 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 the desire to feel good rather
mm,
than the desire to just really clean it up. And feeling good and cleaning up doesn't always coincide, you know. So, I mean, there are many things that can feel good, but feel good healing usually doesn't have such a therapeutic or healing effect. It might, relax us, it might feel good, but it doesn't mean that we're actually addressing the layers that really move the needle within us. And I think that's really what is going to be like the focus coming now, uh, within in the next 20 years, is really the focus on really healing trauma at this deeper level, instead of just talking or trying to bypass it through the body or things like that. Some things simply need to be faced head on in order to be able to release them. And um, and like, for example, I had a session yesterday with a client who was sexually abused as a 16-year-old by a family friend. And she had been struggling to let this person go. And one of the things that I've really found in my own journey and in my work with clients is that you cannot forgive what you do not accept or see as it truly is. And one of the things that she finally acknowledged was that it had been a rape, and that even though um, she had been given the illusion of consent, that it wasn't consent. And it's when we really go into, because it's a defense mechanism, right? What children and people do in situations where they have this deep sense of not being in control, of helplessness, is to to try and feel in control again. And one of the ways that we do that is by taking the blame. Yeah. And that eases this sense of you are helpless and that you can't do anything about it. But in the long run, it hides under the surface what actually really happened. And because the subconscious is so much stronger than the conscious mind, that the truth keeps, you know, um, working through in our lives until we are ready to acknowledge it. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, and I know from my own personal experiences of healing, that's not easy. You know, we as humans, as people, as a society, we're conditioned to avoid pain, right?
Yes.
We're not taught to face it head on. It's like healing at the depths that you're talking about. The way I see it in my mind, I see like a dark, dark wood,
Hmm.
and you're not taught to go into dark woods. You're taught you don't go out in the dark, you know, especially not to parks, woods, whatever. You avoid those at all costs. It's got bad things in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then true healing is the opposite of that. It is going into it. It is going into the dark, and it is
Yeah.
calling a spade a spade. You know, that is part of you taking your power back in it. You know, if you were, as with your client yesterday, that is rape. Let's call it what it is. Let's not call it what do they call it, like a sexual something or another, or whatever. Let's not fluff about it. Let's call it what it is. Let's go to it. Is it comfortable? No. Do we want to do it? No. But do we want what's on the other side of it? Yes. And actually, I believe that the twin flame journey, like much of the spiritual journey, so manifestation, that's spiritual. A lot of people that come onto the manifesting path, the dangling carrot,
Yeah.
manifestation is the thing that twin flames, it's the union with the person that you want. But what you quickly
Yeah.
realize when you're on a true one of either of those paths, spiritual growth or twin flames, which is one and the same, is that
Exactly.
the work and the journey and who you become and what you heal and how you grow, that's the real gift. The thing at the other
Exactly.
side, that golden carrot, that's the bonus, that's the cherry on top. And that's how, for me personally, I've got to a place where I'm not so fixated on any relationship, even though I want to be in one, but I'm not like, oh my God, I'm desperate to be. It's
Mm.
like it's there, and the work that I've done has helped me to become the person that I am today, and I'm good by myself. And and I believe that, yeah, that also the darkness isn't spoken about enough within our industry. Like a lot of what you've
Yeah.
alluded to is like the surface level stuff, the bypassing.
Yeah.
Um, what just popped in my head was like years and years ago. I think it was called like the 555 method or something. Whatever it was called, the thing was you write down like 50 times the amount of money that you want, and you write it down 5 times over 5 pages, and you do that for 5 days, and then you're going to manifest this money. Listen, baby Jade, baby, spiritual baby Jade was like, I don't really feel like this is going to work. That was my soul speaking to me. But head was like, let's just give it a try. What have you got to lose?
Yeah.
There's so much like that out there. I don't know, go do this meditation and focus on this thing, or hold this crystal, or go to this place, or do that. But as you've said earlier, that thing doesn't alleviate the work. It highlights stuff, not the crystals, meditation sometimes. I'm thinking about what you were saying about the astrology pieces. It highlights it, it brings it up. Full moons, we're in a full
Yeah.
moon period right now. There's stuff that's come up for me this week. And it's like the way I see it is like pops up and it's like, hi, I'm here. Are you going to deal with me? And like you say, we have a choice. That's our free will, right? the universe, the divine, our spirit team puts it in our awareness on our path, and we have a choice. And at that point, I see it's like a fork in the road. You choose to heal it, it's going to be dark and scary and uncomfortable, and you're going to want to
Mhm.
not do it. Or you can go down the other path and you can avoid it. But guess what? You can bet your life on it. That shit will come back.
Yep.
It will come back in the same way, in a different way, and it will keep coming up until you choose to truly heal it. And that's what breaking the cycle is, right? We go on these cycles, these patterns. So what came up for me this week was I've been called to lean deeper into my own spiritual knowing and my own spiritual gifts. I'd say like the past 2 years. And this year, the piece is you already know. So, me, I know already certain things. Like it's a
Mhm.
knowing in my body, whether I want it or not, I know it.
Mhm.
But it's fear and doubt that overrides it. And
Mhm.
I've been this week in two separate journaling sessions, it came up. One was something personal and one was something professional. And I laughed because they was on two separate days. And as I was writing the second one, I was like, that literally is the same as what I wrote yesterday, but with a different label on top. And that
Mhm.
was the pattern that needs to be broken. You know this stuff, but you're allowing fear
Mhm.
because of past experiences when things haven't worked out, conditioning, all of the
Mhm.
things, like wherever it's come from, like this fear is like a cloud over it. And my work is now to A, see that. So they say the first step to change is awareness, which I do believe. My second thing is you need to own it because there's no point seeing it and then being like, oh, no, 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 that's not true. Own it. Like, oh, yeah, okay, I get that. And then
Mhm.
doing the steps to make the changes. Um, and then, so this is how I work or how my spirit team communicate with me. I got those messages in those two journal entries. I'd felt it for a while, but journaling really helped me get it out. And then I
Mhm.
read a post about the meaning of the full moon that's on the 12th of February. And it was literally, I laughed and I printed it out and I stuck it in the journal. I was like, see, it was talking about breaking the patterns and the cycles because actually it's repeating those patterns that is impacting me not getting the outcome that I want. It's not because it's not true or available, it's my own patterns that as you shared earlier, like that's come from protection. They're survival mechanisms, right? Keeping us safe and things familiar. That's what's tripping me up. So the bottom line, the ultimate message is get the fuck out your own way.
Yep.
Everything's there, just
Yeah.
move. But I could have chosen to ignore that in that moment and been like, ego, that's not true. I don't do that. Da, 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 da. But
Mhm.
you can bet your and I can say this from my own experience because this is something that's been going on for years, a pattern that's been running for years, that it would have kept
Mm.
coming up. And it shows up professionally, personally, financially, physically, like wherever, because everything affects everything. We think that
Yeah.
things are compartmentalized, something else we're taught, but actually it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is what people don't understand sufficiently either. Um, yeah. And this is especially true with the archetypes that I work with, like the feminine, masculine, wounded feminine, masculine archetypes. Um, it's one wounding, but it manifests in all different areas of our lives in a different way. They're just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, two feminine archetypes, two masculine archetypes, and yet it affects our relationship with our own parents in a certain way, with our own children, with same sex, with the opposite sex, in romantic relationships, in business, in our jobs, etc., etc. It's like it touches upon all the areas of our lives and not just one place. And I think that is something that people insufficiently see. I'm I sometimes wonder if people well, I no, I actually know that people don't realize how much that what they are living is actually their wounding. Yeah, so Um, and Carl Jung already said this, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will think it's fake, and that is literally what happens is we have all of this past life, soul path, and ancestral wounding, and that is left unresolved in those timelines. And so it seeks our current timeline because this is the only timeline that exists in this moment. And we only always have the now. So when we have unresolved issues from whatever period of the past, it will use our current now moment to find resolution. So when we are unaware of this, our current reality is constantly being hijacked by our wounding. Yeah, and it's how our relationships are colored. It's who we attract into our lives. But at the same time, I have big issues with people, and this is especially big in like the spiritual realm, who think that they created everything. Because, nobody creates uh like illness or a narcissistic partner uh, on purpose. So like it's not that you created it, it's that it was in your blueprint. This distortion was there, and therefore it's manifesting it, but you didn't actually create it because in order for you to create, it has to be a conscious effort. And this is a subconscious effort. The subconscious creates it because it was there. But if you take it out, then it's not going to be created. So I have huge issues with people thinking that they somehow created, or other people suggesting that people created the difficult things that they experience in their lives. No, those situations were created for them as an opportunity to heal. But that's a totally different
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I'm also of the school of thought that what shows up in our life, we attract it because it's a vibrational match for something that's already present in us. Like you say, we didn't cause it. It's not our fault. This isn't about blaming or shaming yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Also, yeah, and I also find that having that train of thought, although it's a bitter pill to swallow, can be a bitter pill to swallow. It's a way of taking back your power because the thinking then is, well, if this crap situation happened to me and it's because of a point of attraction within me, I can heal, I can
Mm-hmm.
change that coding inside of me to stop attracting that thing. What a lot of people do is they end up blaming the person, the thing, the circumstance outside themselves and putting all their focus there and trying to change it. And
Yeah.
that's futile. And to put this into a tangible context, I see that a lot with narcissistic relationships. I've been in a narcissistic relationship and I thought that person was the love of my life. It's like I found
Mm.
my person. Remember, as I was
Mm-hmm.
sharing earlier, this has been my dream since I was a kid. So when I found this person, I'm like, yes, hole in one, home run. He's my man. This is it for
Mm-hmm.
the rest of my life. I feel like I've known him forever.
Mm-hmm.
What I've learned through my years of healing is the reason that he felt so familiar, the reason
Mm-hmm.
that I believed him to be a soulmate
Mm-hmm.
is because of the patterning in me. So I was raised by a narcissistic mother
Mm-hmm.
and therefore had certain codings inside of me that then attracted this man into my life. And then he felt so familiar that he felt like a soulmate. But really, he was just the same frequency, the same vibration, the same coding as my mum. And so the subconscious part of me that's used to being treated in a certain way, they were a match. It's
Mm-hmm.
like ding, 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 match.
Yeah.
And it feels like all of these things. Um, but and then through my healing journey, again, I've
Mm-hmm.
never been in a community for people that have been through narcissistic abusive
Yeah.
relationships. Um, again, my soul was just like, this is not for us. This ain't the one. And also because the bits that I have seen online when people are talking about having been through a relationship with someone with narcissistic personality disorder is it's them, it's him, it's her. They need to do this, they need to do that, they need to fix this, they need to do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's
Yeah.
always placing the emphasis outside of yourself. And for when you're doing that and trying to focus on and figure out why this person is this, and that, is taken away from you focusing on yourself. And we know we can't change anyone but ourselves, or we're
Hmm.
supposed to know that, right? And so I understood and I learned a little bit about narcissistic personality disorder and how that impacted me, how he operates, but not to try and fix him or keep my focus there. It was the
Hmm.
intellectual piece that I needed for my own healing to understand how he operates and to not keep getting caught up in the patterns and the cycles, and then to do the healing work on myself.
Hmm.
And then my belief from a complete soul perspective is my soul chose these experiences back when I was a star. Like this person that was in a relationship, he's not a villain. He chose to come into this life to play that role. My soul chose to be with him to have those experiences. I guess this is what you were sharing earlier about the karma, to for me to clear that karma, to heal from those
Hmm.
things. And from a complete enlightened perspective, something else that's come to me over the years is that you have to be a pretty strong soul to come to this planet to choose to be an abusive person. And
Hmm.
I'm not condoning any behavior. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying, yay narcissist or nay any toxic personality. But to come into this life to be that antagonist, if you will, in our stories, to be that person to trigger us to heal, that takes a lot.
Hmm. And it takes a lot of love on a soul level. They have to love you a lot in order to be willing to play this role. And because
Mm.
it's both sides that um, are needed to help us like bring awareness to where our wounds are. But I think, you can't really have a relationship with a narcissist because the narcissist is too much, consumed with with themselves. Um, and it's like, you know, um, in the same way that you can't really have a relationship with a drug addict because they're in a relationship with drugs or any kind of addiction. They're in a relationship with the addiction. Um, I also think that people use the term narcissism too loosely. It's an official diagnosis, and it needs to be, made by a professional, and so like basically every person is on the spectrum of narcissism, except some people are further on that spectrum than we are. But everyone has narcissistic traits, so it's not like, and often what I found in sessions with people who would be convinced that their person was narcissistic or was a narcissist was that they had this deeply repressed narcissistic side in themselves, that they were like completely rejecting and disowning. And that's also a thing, in order to be whole, it's not just the good side that we need to accept. It's also the things that we don't want to accept about ourselves, the things that we've judged or deemed bad, that's part of our wholeness. So that's one part. I also believe what you were saying about initiations. I believe that we attract narcissists in our lives in order to step into our power, because that is the only option within a relationship with a narcissist, is to step into your power. So often, and this would be the archetype of the overbearing masculine, which would be the narcissist, and the insatiable inner feminine, which would be kind of like a damsel in distress, someone who's very not much in her power. So they tend to attract each other because they're learning to balance the power. Just as much as the collapse inner masculine, is having difficulty holding power, and the rigid inner feminine is much more dominant within that dynamic. Yeah. So and both types of relationships tend to codependency. So, I mean, we can have codependency in the sense of that the one is completely dependent on the other. Um, but we can also have codependency while seeming to be the one that's highly functioning. So when we're talking about codependency, both partners are codependent in order to make it a codependent dynamic. And usually we only look at the weaker person within the codependent relationship and deem them codependent. But it takes two people to create that dynamic. And
Hmm.
um, and so we have that in both the cases. So you know, to me, coming into a relationship with a narcissist is about reclaiming your power. Um, Coming into contact with your twin flame, however brief or long that journey is about coming home to yourself. You know, it's about really finding all the pieces of yourself that you've scattered throughout your journey and bring them back into the self. And of course, you know, every time we experience trauma, a part of us gets stuck in that trauma. And so a lot of the work that we need to do is go back to those moments of trauma and bring back those pieces that we lost or disowned or rejected in those moments. So yeah, and I think the twin flame journey is a very um, interesting journey and a very beneficial one to bring us uh, much further in our lives, and that goes for both partners, even when we can't necessarily see that that is true for the other person. You know, so often the women tend to think that they're somehow more evolved and further along than their counterpart, um, but it's just they're in a different process, and so they're doing their development simply in a different way than perhaps we are. But it doesn't mean
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
yeah that they're not in that process as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's also when we bring it back to masculine and feminine, that's because men and women operate in different ways, right? Women are in their in their balanced um, in their balanced way, so not any distortions of it. In a pure feminine energy, the female is the spiritual lead, and the masculine is the physical lead. That shows up in two different ways. Women heal from the inside out. Males tend to heal from the outside in. We operate in different ways, you know, just
Mm,
very on a very basic level. It's like left brain, right brain. They're all part of
hmm.
one, but in different ways. It's the same with that
Yeah.
masculine and feminine. Um, I've thought that I was, you know, more evolved further along the line over the years. And then on the brief occasion that we've come back into contact with each other, there's something that he said or something that has happened. And I realize that that's not the truth, that he is a lot further than I think he is. And then it's just accepting that, and this goes for any relationship, right? We're all on our own individual journey, and
Mm,
we all are going to heal in different ways and at different times. And it's none of your business, whether that's your child or your twin flame or your friend or a family
yeah.
member. That's none of your business when it is. And again, you know, when we are focused on the other person, whoever that may be, and how and when they're healing, that's again putting the focus outside of yourself. The key is to bring it back to you, bring it back
Yeah.
inside of yourself. What do I need to do? How do I want to show up in this situation? How do I want to deal with it? And for me, that's the ultimate answer to everything these days. Whatever it is
Mm,
is
mm.
bringing it back to me and bringing it in. And on a collective level, that's where I see we are heading. We have been headed that way for years. I believe that 2020 was a huge catalyst for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to deepen. We are in human design, we're moving from one time to another. And I don't remember what the current time is, but I know where we're moving into is about, again, like coming home to you and going within. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the time of not giving our power away to any coach, guru, psychic reader, whoever.
Yeah,
And it is
about.
about coming back to our own inner compass and our own inner voice. I never realized over the years how active and how in touch with my soul that I am. I've always
Mm-hmm.
just thought making stuff up. It's just me, like it's my voice, it's whatever. But when I look
Mm-hmm.
back, hindsight's 2020, I can see how I've always been guided. And like I
Mm-hmm.
shared, I never declared, oh, I'm in a twin flame journey. Like that was shown to me. And I'm like, oh, okay. I learned that I'd been in a narcissistic relationship after the fact. And again, it's something that resonated and I felt the depths of. And that understanding gave me a new perspective and then kind of signaled to me where to go. And
Mm-hmm.
having that connection with myself and my inner voice and allowing my soul to lead more and more when it makes sense, especially when it doesn't make sense, that's the real work. And I feel like that's definitely my next level work of like just surrendering
Mm-hmm.
and letting go more. It's like that whole ego soul thing, right? Um, there's a lot of labels we have in our society. I completely agree. Narcissism, like twin flames, are words that are thrown around far too much. As
Yeah.
you rightly said, we're all narcissistic. Like that's part of being human. We need to
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit selfish. That's part of our survival. But us all being narcissists doesn't equal narcissistic personality disorder. Same way that you having a few drinks doesn't equal you being an alcoholic. They're two very different things. And I think that's what most people miss. As spirituality becomes more and more popular and trendy,
Mm-hmm.
and as amazing that is, in one sense, for an awakening, we're seeing words like twin flames thrown around a lot more. I've seen on social
Mm-hmm.
media someone will be like, me and my twin flame, hashtag twin flame. And I just kind of giggle to myself because I'm like, if you only knew, you would not be opting for this. Um, but again, to pick up on something else that you said, it's going back to that idea that we're not taught to go and play in the dark. We're taught to avoid
Mm-hmm.
it at all. When I think about my family growing up, my mum's from a generation that you don't talk about stuff, you brush it under the carpet and you pretend like it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we are moving, we have moved and will continue to move into a time where it's like, no, let's call it out. Going back to your story about your client, let's
Mm-hmm.
call it what it is. Um, and it's not until we can do that stuff that we can move forward as individuals and as a collective. And on a collective note, and going back to twin flames, I know there's a school of thought out there. There's two different camps. I think you might have mentioned it earlier. Some people believe twin flames are meant to be together, some people are not. My
Mm-hmm.
personal belief is they are, because it's not just about your individual romantic relationship, it's about the collective impact. When twin flames come together, it's like two strong people that are good by themselves, but you're a force when you're together. And that
Mm-hmm.
force together and the ripple effects from that on your own family and friends, but the collective as a whole, that's the true power. The more I look at like how we're being called to rise up, the all of the things on a collective level, like twin flames are just a part of that. It's not
Mm-hmm.
really about it is about your romantic relationship. It's kind of like it's the golden carrot again, but it's not only that. And I know from a previous conversation we've had, it's actually a really great segue. Twin flames aren't a new concept. So you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned when we've spoken previously about like the OGs of twin flames. So I know that Yes, you are. And Mary Magdalene were twin flames. Osiris and Isis, I believe.
Yes.
These are tales as old as time, but most people don't realize that. And when we look at the work that these power couples did, those divine power couples, they
Hmm.
changed the game. And they're changing the game, and the work they did is still impacting, I don't know, what are we, hundreds, thousands of years since their time? And that's the
Hmm.
work flames coming into union now and for the next few years is going to do for the
Hmm.
generations.
But I think the thing is to truly come into union. uh, I think this is where people make a mistake. They want the 3D relationship, but this is actually a much higher dimensional relationship. Let's call it 5D. Most people think 5D is energetic. It's not. It also takes place in the physical. It's just a higher dimensional reality, and so we cannot have the twin flame relationship with our wounding intact. So we have to
Mhm.
work on that because like when our own inner masculine, inner feminine are not equals, then we also cannot be equals externally with men and women. Yeah, so and these
Yeah.
relationship, twin flame relationships are based on completely being each other's equals. Yeah, so
Mhm.
if there's still wounding around the equality of women, and so basically patriarchal conditioning, and that is not to say, a lot of people interpret that as being against white men, rich white men. No, that's not what I mean when I'm talking about the patriarchy. Patriarchy is a belief system in which we decided that the masculine was superior to the feminine. And I wrote a whole series on that last year. And one of the things that I clearly saw in regards to the patriarchy was that it was created in a time where the survival of the whole group depended on men. So we were still nomadic people moving from pasture to pasture, basically. We were not doing agriculture yet. No, we were picking berries and we were hunting. And in that setting, we needed men to protect us against animals and rivaling tribes. And so in that's where customs were born, for example, that when and this lasted really long also in European countries, even up till the 17 1800s, when there was like famine, drought, whatever, civil wars, etc. uh, Women would be given less food and men and boys would be given the most food. And there are two reasons for that. First of all, women are biologically superior, so we are better equipped biologically to deal with famine and drought. And boys are much more vulnerable, so boys will die easier, more easily as young children than girls will. Um, and it kind of like became this thing that it never was. So it wasn't because boys were more valuable than women. It was because boys and men ensured the survival of the whole tribe more than girls and women could. So it was just a survival mechanism that
Mm.
was passed down, and like the telephone game, became this completely different thing. Yeah, but initially
Yeah.
it was just a survival mechanism. That's where it all comes from. And so it's important to like go deep within our psychological programming and our patterning to find these beliefs where we are still holding them within ourselves. So when I work with people, they'll be amazed to currently believe consciously very modern and feministic ideas, and then still find past lives where they had very um, primitive ideas around women. But that was simply because that was normal at that time. And so when we carry wounding around that, we can still carry these kind of beliefs around that. For example, from my own lifetime, there was a life that I was like very religious as a man, and I deeply believe that men and women were not created equal in the eyes of God, because of the whole rib translation thing, which is a wrong translation anyway. But so there's this has had such an influence on who we have become as human beings, which has really distorted this masculine and feminine balance within ourselves. And to have these true higher level relationships that the twin flame relationship also invites us to have, also in regards to unconditional love. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, because unconditional love is anything but letting people walk all over you. That is not unconditional love, because unconditional love cannot exist without unconditionally loving yourself. Yeah. So if
Mhm.
your unconditional love for someone else damages you, or puts you into a lower position, or has you giving more and receiving less, then it's not unconditional. It's you trying to get something by behaving in
Mhm.
a certain way, and then putting the label of unconditional love on that. But it's not actual unconditional love. Sometimes unconditional love is just saying fucking no. That's the most loving thing you can do. It's just say no. Forget it. Not
Yeah,
going there, not
without
doing it.
justifying or explaining yourself, just no, or
Yeah,
just fuck off.
yeah, yeah. And that can be absolutely unconditional love. But it just we keep circling back to the same thing. We are so used to things looking in a certain way, and being this unicorn rainbow, fluffy cloud, whatever bullshit, that it's distorted everything. Love can also be very strict. It has, you know, unconditional love doesn't mean that there are no boundaries. Because if you
Mm,
unconditionally love someone, then boundaries are a part of that.
yeah, that's something that's missed a lot, and perpetuates abusive situations or
Yeah,
situations where you're settling for than you deserve or that you want so much. You remind me that the world is kind of messy right now. And we chose to be here at this time. This is the work. And it is about, again, bringing all of this stuff to light. Like you've said,
exactly.
raising awareness, bringing in the education of things are this way because of stuff that happened centuries ago.
Yeah,
And it doesn't mean it's right. And then that makes me think that a lot of people are scared to challenge the status quo. They're
yeah,
scared to question. They just blindly follow a sheep, sheeples, humanoids, whatever. And it's about questioning things. And that comes up in lots of different ways. Um, One of the things that I've been paying attention to recently is like food. Like there are certain things
oh
that we're
yeah,
told are good for us, they're healthy for us. And then it's like I turn over and I read the ingredients and I'm like, this is terrible. And it's kind of
mm,
like that. Like we're told all of these things from school, parents, society, all of the things, and we blindly follow it. But is it really good for us? Does it really make you feel good? Is it
Hmm.
really serving us as a collective humanity, or even on an individual level? Going back to relationships, is the relationship you're in, does it really turn you on? Does it really light you up? Do you feel really good? Or are you just there because you've been with them for a couple of decades and they walk all over you and it's comfortable and it's familiar, and it's not easy to question these things. And but we didn't come here to settle. And for
Exactly.
those of us that are called to do this kind of work, and it's not even this kind of work, it's even just speaking up. I believe that you can be a stay-at-home mum or a stay-at-home dad, and that's all you want for your life, and a compound with lots of land to grow your own stuff, and just questioning, like, is this really truly what I want, or is it what is it a decision that I made through pain, like, fuck the world, I'm going to go and live off grid? Or
Hmm.
are you in a job just because, well, that's what my dad did and that's what my granddad did, or, that's the family
Hmm.
business? Like, does it truly make you happy? And these are the kind of questions we need to start looking at and pulling up, and pulling out the programming and healing from. And again, it doesn't mean it's easy. It does mean going into a dark wood and looking at things that you don't want to deal with sometimes, but it's necessary for
Hmm.
yourself. And I always think about the future generations. Generational trauma is not the only thing that could be passed down. We can pass down generational healing, generational gifts. Like,
Hmm.
let's go do that. Like, let's change the world in that way. That's my outlook on it. So the healing work that I do, it's not just about me. It's about my son, the one that's currently here. It's about my future children. And God willing, it's about my grandchildren and my great grandchildren and my great great grandchildren. Like, it's all of the things forward, not just us
Hmm.
cleaning up shit from all the way backwards back to when we were stars and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, and everything that you heal now for yourself in this lifetime, you will not take with you to the next. That's also a thing. Because just as much as we pass down ancestral wounding, our past life predecessors pass down their unresolved stuff to us as well. And so the more that we clean up in our current lifetime, the less we take with us to, and this is a really good one to introduce the causal body. So I work with the causal body. So the causal body is the only body that follows us from lifetime to lifetime. So when we die, the physical body, emotional body, the mental body, the vibrational body, they all die. Yeah, they cease to exist. But it's the causal body that follows us to the next lifetime. And in the causal body is where the karmic templates are held, which holds our trauma, our karma, and our samskaras. Samskaras means impressions. Yeah, so all our experiences that we were not able to deal with in that, in that moment are stored there, as well as our positive and negative experiences that just on like a normal incarnation level we use to navigate our experience. Because otherwise, every time we would incarnate, we would otherwise start from zero, right? We would have to relearn everything. But through the causal body, we keep this knowledge and take it with us subconsciously. And so the the causal body is not a body in the sense that that other bodies are. It's actually the body that creates our mental, emotional, vibrational, and physical body for each embodiment. Yeah, based on what is in those karmic templates. And the karmic body or the causal body, which is also called the karmic body, is a seed sustained by karma. So the more we heal all of this stuff that was left unresolved in these previous lifetimes, the more we exhaust the 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 things that we've stored in the causal body, and therefore do not take it with us into a next lifetime. And in fact, when we completely heal all of it, which is possible, because that is the end destination for all of us, like I've heard before, many people say, we're never done healing. Well, that's not true. We're never done growing and evolving. But there is a point that we can actually truly heal everything that, we have taken with us. And and that's when this causal body ceases to exist, and we can, reunite with the divine, with source. So
So that would be an ascended master
yes,
level.
exactly, exactly, exactly. And so, we started our soul journey by splitting from source and using trauma in order to descend into physical form. And the now we are in the ascending arc of our human evolution. And so now we are actually healing that trauma in order to ascend again back into our light being state rather than our physical state.
That also reminds me, so, you know, this whole moving from 3D to 5D, old Earth, new Earth, it's like we densified to go down into the 3D, and what created our old Earth. And now we're all, not all, those of us that have opted um, to heal and to evolve and do all the things and then ascend up
Mhm.
into the higher dimensions and create a new Earth and a new way of being. That actually reminds me, as I've just said that out loud, I haven't thought about this book for a while, but the Celestine Prophecy.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
always, I absolutely love that book, and I know that it's written as a storybook, but
Mhm.
yeah, I believe otherwise. And what I when people ask me, or when my son has asked me when he's younger, like what's the purpose of life, that's kind of my thing. And it's exactly what you've just said. Actually, it's about raising ourselves back up to a level where it is heaven on earth.
Exactly.
It's not, heaven isn't just a place you go to after you die. It's a place that we can live in existence as a collective. And I think, at some point, probably not in our lifetimes, we'll get there. But that doesn't mean to say that us as individuals can't experience a heaven on earth right now. You can experience, you find your pleasure in every moment of life. That's your free will, that's your power. But ultimately, yeah, it is all about that. And then it's also my belief that's why we experience things like the solar flares and the Schumann resonance and the impacts. It's like shaking the snow globe and bringing all your shit up. And like you say, the shit comes
Mhm.
up, but it doesn't mean because the shit comes up, it's automatically healed. You still have to opt in to do the healing.
Yeah.
But all of those things happen from the divine, from source, to like it's telling us almost to wake up.
Mhm.
It's go time, go do your thing. And you get to fork in the road. You're okay, I'm going to do that thing. Begrudgingly. Susie's like, this is my experience. It's like, oh, again, like really? Okay, we go. Or you can
Mhm.
just choose to like get on your merry way. But it's that saying, it's all happening for us. I believe it's all soul growth.
Absolutely.
It's of
Yeah.
my past. And it is all about that. And it's not an easy journey. And it can also be really beautiful. And
Mhm.
the twin flame journey, not an easy path. Um,
Mm-mm.
anyone that tells you it is, as I say about anyone that tells you that in the spiritual realm that it's easy and it's 1, 2, 3 and poof, run on far, far away. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's always hard. And I believe that this is something I've learned through my journey, that we can handle all of it.
Hmm.
Like we're not given more than we can handle. And in the moment, we might think, this is so hard. I don't want to do this anymore. You know,
Hmm.
throw the towel. I've wanted to write my soul letters and like leave it in what do they call those things? A time capsule and be like, bitch, do not sign up for this shit time round. It is way too much. You're doing too much. Please do not. But I'm also very aware that that's ego and that's, the victim part that's like, oh, we can't handle this and we need this, 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 and this. And actually, I can. And it's in those moments that I've had some of my greatest growth and my greatest life lessons. And I wouldn't change any of it.
Mm.
And I say that on my strong days, on my weak days, I'm like, I changed so much. It's so fucking hard. And it has been. I'm not negating that. And I also recognize the parts of me, you said earlier, like when we go through trauma and like parts of us go on
Yeah.
You didn't say these words, companies, they go into lockdown, like bringing those parts back in, embracing the shadow, because it's not just about the light. That's another thing that's, I think, touted in spirituality. You know, it's all love, light, and rainbows, and it's not. It's about both. We're not just either or, and you can't
Mhm.
have one without. You know, you. How do you heal the darkness? You bring it into the light. It's about becoming
Yeah.
whole again and seeing the gnarly parts of yourself and all of it. And that's the journey.
True.
Thank you so much, Sabriyé, for being here with me and having this conversation. Um, I trust that whoever is watching, listening, there's something for you, whether you watching, listening in 2025 or 2035. Um, it's a conversation that was needed, and I'm grateful to have shared it with you. Is there anything that you want to share before I close out?
If you are on the twin flame journey, take it as an opportunity to dive deep inside of yourself and really find the gold within yourself rather than thinking that it is within the twin flame.
Amen to that. Beautiful. Thank you so much. So, thank you for tuning in today, and I will see you in the next episode very soon. Until then, big love. Mwah.